Simagic sent the EVO Ultimate for review. I also have an affiliate link with them and discount codes in the description for you if you want to help the channel out. As always, all opinions are my own, and that's going to be patently obvious. The EVO Ultimate is part of a sim racing range of wheelbases that I dub more torque than a 1990s Honda VTEC, because this has 28 Newton meters. This review can be basically summarized like, it's like I say on my EVO Sport review, but with more torque and more refinement, but in some areas, even bigger pitfalls. I get why people like this wheelbase family, but the way that this was launched, the hype surrounding it, kind of confused me, like this is going to cure cancer or going to make GTP drivers drive any better. It's nothing of the sort. I'm going to Pierluigi Collina on this one. But before going there, a big thank you to all the viewers, members, and subscribers. Without you, believe me, reviews like these before the launch wouldn't be possible. I'm trying to get 100,000 subscribers, and that's really, really close. So if you press that like and subscribe button, and if you enjoy these types of reviews, that will help a lot. Thank you so much. In this review, not only I'm going to cover the wheelbase, but also their QRA adapter that apparently got a few revisions. I've been using this with the GSI FPV2 with no problem whatsoever. It's basically plug and play. There are a few things here that I'm finding a little bit confusing, but generally it has been okay as well. The price, as indicated to me before launch, it is $970 US, 820 euros, depending on which country you're going to buy this from, because it will depend within the European Union. And in terms of price in the United Kingdom, it should be around 720 to around 780 Great British pounds, but that will, of course, depend on the import duties and whatever else. So in terms of price, it's smack bang in the middle of everything. It is more expensive than the Mazda R25. The VNM and VRS options, but then cheaper than the Asetek Invicta 27 Newton meters. It is cheaper than a SemiCube 3, cheaper than a Podium DD by not much, and roughly around the same price as the SemiCube 2, because now those have discounts. So the range of this more torque than Honda VTEC from 1990s, range in wheelbases is getting cheaper and ever so more varied with lots and lots of offerings. And the choices between one to the other aren't really that transparent, because it will depend much more than just the wheelbase. The unboxing experience is pretty much straightforward. It's a big box, basically, with a few things inside. There is, of course, the wheelbase inside. This wheelbase inside is 11 kilos, and this is long. This is around 36 centimeters, so this is a long wheelbase. It will depend, of course, on use case. Because it is so long, make sure you plan ahead. Inside there are a couple of goodies. That includes the huge 550 watt PSU. It is really quite big, and it's different in terms of design, as most of the PSUs out there, generally they tend to be always of the same type. And inside there's also this emergency stopper that I haven't really connected. I never felt the use of using an emergency stopper. But if you are one of those people, you want to make sure that if something goes wrong, you have a way to press it. Well, it comes inside in a box. There's a lot of specs being thrown around. Specs by themselves, generally, they are bullshit. But if you really want to hear about them, so this has 28 Newton meters, the same encoder as the rest of the family, including the EVO Sport. Over here, apparently they say it's the same type of low inertia motor as a Sport, but as you turn this around, you can really feel that this one is significantly more cogged than the Sport. This feels more like, or even more than the Asetek Forte that I also have. So it isn't really that uncogged, but generally that doesn't really mean anything, because once you turn on the wheelbase does a lot of other things to counteract that torque, and it becomes actually quite light. Anyways, in theory, this type of uncogged motor will bring more dynamic range and responsiveness to the wheelbase, but in theory is one thing, in practice it's more complicated than that. So my wheelbase, even though it wasn't stated as such when they sent it to me, I suspect this has been some sort of test unit before launching that was heavily curated to make sure that it didn't have any problems when it's sent to us, the content creators or influencers or whatever you want to say, just to have minimum amounts of issues. And I think that was the case, because the wheelbase is heavily scratched at the bottom at the places where you normally try to attach the bolts, because these ones don't come in rails, like for example on the Podium DD, and also because the box where it came in, it felt it was already pretty much used, where a lot of people took in and took out the equipment multiple times, to the point that one of the boxes is ripped through the seams. Now, generally, that is not an issue. That is not an issue whatsoever. It's part and parcel of doing content creation. However, I must say there's something really strange with this wheelbase specifically, because when you turn it on, you have a high-pitched noise that I'm not really sure that if it's coil whine or it's fan whine, depending on the profile that you're going to use. That can actually go through my headphones, and my headphones, because they're open backs, they tend to bleed in as well a few of the noise, and the noise is kind of pitchy. The coil whine that you're going to hear in a moment, it's generally more than what I've heard about the Club Sport DD back in the day when it was launched. A lot of Club Sport DDs were affected by coil whine issues. In terms of mounting holes, there are 4 at the bottom in the Fanatec pattern, 2 at the side for side mounting. In Simagic, if you want, they also offer solutions for mounting. At the front, there are some pins for accessories. I believe the Zeus line will be compatible with this. And at the back, there's a lot of inputs and outputs for many types. At the left, you have the USB-B for the wheelbase connection, the USB-C for the QR pass-through, a lot of RJs for their line of shifters, handbrakes, and also for the emergency stop, and also USB-A ports, which are CAN bus only. Boo. The QR costs $89. It's made of aluminum, weighs around 435 grams, so in reality, it's very much in line with the D-Spec quick release weight, so it won't add much more to whatever you normally add to the wheel. The mounting though is kind of weird, because really only 3 of them are accessible from the top. You would really need a very short and tight Allen key to get the rest of them. But anyways, normally I use 4 bolts for this type of pattern, but for this one I end up using 3, and I felt no issue whatsoever in terms of rigidity with this. The EVO Ultimate is running with a Sim Pro Manager version 3. This was released in parallel with this wheelbase. I've been using a pre-release version of this software, and much like the version 2 that I've used with the EVO Sport, I only have good things to say about this software. For me, this software and the Asetek ones are the top of the line in sim racing at the moment. They are deep and wide enough, but not overly complex. They have good things like, for launching your game, you can add a preset, so you don't need to go back to the software to change presets every time you load it once you have a good one. So it simplifies everything. I like it when it's the case. You can update your software very easily as well. There's a bunch of FAQs, so if you have some sort of issues, it's a very, very good software. One of my favorite things about this is about the preset manager. There's a bunch of presets already preloaded to the software that you can change. And these presets, except for Le Mans Ultimate, in my opinion, are actually quite good. And in this specific case, I must say that these seem to be not done for the EVO Ultra, but for the EVO Sport. So essentially, I would keep everything pretty much the same. I would just raise the power around to the level that you want. You can disable high torque if you want to. It will tell the firmware as well that it is running. Currently, I'm running the 2.2.4, which is the recommended one that I got from Simagic. There's a newer version, but it wasn't working correctly. And one thing that you can also do as well with these ones is that once you create a profile for you, you can tell it what game is it for. So for example, if this works really well in some of the profiles in this game, in this software actually work for multiple software for multiple games. For example, the iRacing or the Assetto Corsa one, you can use either or. So we can use the iRacing one in Assetto Corsa and Assetto Corsa in iRacing, and they work quite well. So for example, if you have one that you like very, very much in one game, you can try it in another one, and it will work for multiple games. So you can basically give some sort of prefixes here, and with that would do filtering. This is the kind of user interface and user experience stuff that I like, because it makes it so easy for you to parse through all the information and through all the profiles without spending a lot of time figuring out what is what, because once you create it, you just do the flags and that's basically it. As for the software, this software is quite easy to understand. For Le Mans Ultimate specifically, I still think it's lacking in the way that it interacts with the game, or the firmware interacts with the game. These are my settings for Le Mans Ultimate, and it's very important to have a decent level, very low level of filter level, and very low level of force feedback details, but also increasing the dampening. I was told by Simagic that this wheelbase doesn't run any dampening out of the firmware, or very little dampening out of the firmware. That means that for Le Mans Ultimate, in order to control it, it's not just via the filtering level, but also through the mechanical damper. This will help out reduce the harsh peaks that I will talk about later. So it is quite easy to use. You can also remove the ring light settings. So if you don't like the light, honestly, I am leaving it on, because with the GSI FPV2, this is large enough to cover it. And even with the GT Neo, I didn't find it any issue, even at 100%, with that smaller wheel. So the ring light for me ends up being something that is there just for the sake of design. It doesn't have any practical sense to it. So if you want to turn it off, you can turn it off. You cannot turn it on, you can turn it on. This software, for me, it is fantastic. It brings up the Asetek level of polish, but adds a little more to it, makes it a little more complicated, but still easy enough to use. And it's one of the standards, in my opinion, for sim racing software. As for the driving, I could surmise this. My impressions are essentially the same I got with the Evo Sport. But with this one, you just are bumping really the torque. Almost a copy paste. It feels like it's the same family, but way, way stronger, more ready for heavier wheels. I must preface all of this saying that pretty much almost every wheelbase, direct drive wheelbase, feels good out of the box unless there's something wrong with this. And they tend to feel generally really, really nice. With the Evo, it is exactly the same thing, Evo Sport, Evo Ultimate. Except with Le Mans Ultimate, that even with this, continues to be a very confusing mess to tune properly. And there's also more that happens in Le Mans Ultimate than there's transponded afterwards towards Assetto Corsa Evo, for example. The profiles available for Le Mans Ultimate at Sim Pro 3, I would say they are below subpar for this sim alone. And for this sim alone, there is a choice to do. For the texture, especially at curbings or hard braking with cornering and ABS activation, or even uneven surfaces, giving the example of curbs will have indentations, and all direct drives I've tested have a high force and frequency that more or less matches each indentation of the curb. Whenever you go over them, it feels like a guttural experience, it feels like you are really well connected. But the Simagic line goes way over the top in all the wrong places for Le Mans Ultimate. What I've seen in reviews and somewhere else being called as detail is the wheelbase software or firmware overreacting to the signal, which then is translated into your hands as a very high frequency. It's almost like other wheelbases, it's something solid, and the Simagic is hitting every single atom in between. Fixing this requires a lot of testing, and it's hard to get to the level of the competition is at for LMU. I've had a very productive call with the Simagic representative about Le Mans Ultimate alone. We ended up doing a lot of testing for tuning this wheelbase or giving a profile that more or less matches what I like. Generally, you need to go to the software and put the filtering from the software at 4, and then you can use the settings that I have in the screen. I'm not sure if they are going to add them to their own software, but if you want to copy them, there they are. This is really the most comfortable I've been with Simagic, both on the Sport in here, but even so, there are a few downsides with this, because those impacts at the curbs, and if you ever track the car, you will know, they tend to be quite vicious on the steering wheel, even with power steering cars. But with the strategy of fixing the noise, there's a lot of loss in amplitude, a lot of presence is gone. We are either choosing between comfort or presence, and unfortunately you can't have both at a time or have a more personalized level that you can have of detail, like you can have for Fanatec, Asetec, Conspit, Logitech, Moza, and heck, even PXN. Simagic will have to find a way to either deal better with the LMU signal or provide a way to tune the frequency and amplitude of those vibrations. With that profile, everything gets better, but you still have that little bit of loss of detail that I would like to have. But that's really not the case with most sims that I've tried. It's LMO Ultimate. It is exclusive, but in Assetto Corsa Evo, there's also something similar, but you can lower down the gain a little bit or remove the details of the sim a little bit, and that will be better. But still, in Evo, and I think it's all due to the frequency response of this wheelbase that you cannot really tune it like you could, for example, in Conspit. You have a pass-through filter and you can raise or decrease the amplitude of that, or with Moza you can lower or increase that specific frequencies. This will require something else for these two sims. Anyways, for everything else that I've tried, so Assetto Corsa Rally, and iRacing, the reactions are very similar to my experiences with the sport. Assetto Corsa in particular is excellent. It's truly one of the best, or even the best wheelbase I've tried in Assetto Corsa in my opinion. Drifting in particular with this wheelbase is most immersive and responsive with all of the ecosystems. The sense of weight shift and control is phenomenal. The turning of the wheelbase is really excellent. The stock profiles are actually quite good. I didn't need to do anything specific with them. And actually, the Assetto Corsa setup can be used in Assetto Corsa Evo or Assetto Corsa Rally. And in these two sims, besides reducing a little bit of the gain on the Assetto Corsa Evo, this wheelbase worked flawlessly. For iRacing specifically, exactly the same reactions I had with the sport. Very good wheelbase. The curbing feels correct. The loss of traction, the increase of traction through the corners, loading of Gs, the change of surface, evenness, and all of that, it feels really nice. It feels a very natural base to use. And once again, the profiles that are available stock work really well. If so, I just raised a little bit of the torque, and that was basically it. During the time that I used this, this wheelbase did warm up more on the warm side than on the hotter side. It's more than lukewarm. But nothing really that severe. More in Limo Ultimate, because I use a lot of torque in Limo Ultimate. I put it like to 20 Newton meters and lower the gain significantly in the sim. It's how I feel it's better to be used. And if you put your hands on top of it, it's really more than lukewarm. But in Assetto Corsa, in iRacing, I use less torque and it feels more like ambient temperature. So it really depends on your use case. But pay attention. It's not one wheelbase that will be like the Podium DD or like the Club Sport DD, where you can crank it up 100% all the time and it stays always cool. This one, because of the small format, it will have some sort of impact with heat soak, so your sim rig will also help with that. In terms of sound, I must say that the sound pitch will change when you move around your wheelbase or your wheel. And if you change the Simpro settings a lot, especially on the filtering, it's when the sound coming from this, I'm not sure if it's coil whine or fan or whatever, it will start to spike up to the point it can become annoying. I'm not sure if it's my unit or if it's something that's that will be more prevalent in all of the Ultimate units. As for the QRA, it works flawlessly. I believe it can only provide up to 7.5 watts, and with the GSI-FP V2, even though it's a power-hungry wheel, it didn't have any issues whatsoever powering that wheel, and I used it with no cuts whatsoever. It always felt stable. The 3 bolts didn't give me any issues whatsoever, so I have no problem using it and keep using it. I'm going to go to conclusions now, and I'm going to start my conclusions with something that I've tried before, which is the Podium DD. Because even though this says it's with 28 Newton meters and the Podium DD is 25 with a 33 Newton meter overshoot, there is something in the response that are different between those two wheelbases. Despite the Ultimate being a 28 Newton meter wheelbase and technically more powerful than Podium DD, the Podium DD does feel stronger and is able to keep the torque more consistently. But does it really matter when it really has more torque than the Honda VTEC? It doesn't, and I'm really aware that the Honda VTEC's joke is just a joke. It's not true. Honda VTECs from the 90s do have more torque than this wheelbases. It's just a joke. Please don't take it too seriously. So yeah, the torque difference is likely due to how the Podium delivers the torque for the overshoot and actually keeps holding to that torque. The Ultimate doesn't feel anemic by any chance. It would be a really stupid thing to say, but it does feel different. I don't see any superiority of a no-cogging wheelbase when the firmware doesn't give a damn about it in one way or the other. For me, it's just interesting to see how different build techniques or philosophies achieve certain results from the same problem and what advantages and downsides they actually bring to this. What this means is that each wheelbase or brand will have different flavors on the force feedback feeling, and at this torque level I have tried also the Conspit Aris Platinum 20 Newton meters, and all between all of these, even though the force feedback does have different flavors, my favorite flavor is still the Fanatec one because it feels on average generally more natural. The difference between these wheelbases is actually negligible, so I'm leaving for the comments below to tell me and tell us with certainty which wheelbase is actually the best, because I'm pretty sure you already have tried all of these before launch. So my opinion about all of this, if you should buy this one over the other or the other one over this, is that it's been the same as it has been for the last few years. You don't really buy this based on which one has the best cult following or cultists or hype or technically the better superior numbers on a paper. You buy this through a holistic approach, and that means you look at it from your point of view, from a problem that needs to be solved. What are you expecting from this? What accessories you need? So you need to look at ecosystems, you need to look at compatibility, you need to look at the sims that you drive in, and you need to look at how much money you want to spend, or the quick releases, or a bunch of other things. So what does that mean? It means that on its own, with the power it wants to deliver and all of the features that it has, the Simagic EVO Ultimate is actually quite a decent proposition in a segment that is heating up with a lot of offers like the Podium DD, the Aris 20 meters, VNM, VRS, SimiCube, or even the Simagic owns Alpha U. It's really not difficult to recommend this as a wheelbase for you if you want to go to jump to something like this, or even to go below it if you go for the 18 meters version, because honestly, this is a good wheelbase, with the exception of that issue that is prevalent in Lamella Ultimate that can also transfer to Assetto Corsa Evo. The quick release pass-through solution is not cheap, but it's not that expensive as well, and it works quite well, even though it is not as an elegant of a solution as Asetek's or Conspit's own version, which is basically a ring over here and then it spits out the USB lines through the back. So yeah, your mileage may vary. Very, very good wheelbase on a segment that is completely heating up, and very soon, probably in the next couple of months, SimLab will release their new DD line. So I'm expecting big things of those ones as well.